You know what, guys? I'll be honest with you. If it wasn't for Stellar Blade's main protagonist, there's a very good chance I would have missed what I would now describe as a truly exceptional experience. Back in April, we were treated to the first hour of Stellar Blade, a fresh narrative-driven action-adventure title exclusive for PlayStation 5 consoles. Having only previously worked on the free-to-play mobile game Goddess of Victory Nikke, the Korean developers Shift Up had a lot riding then on their first mainline console entry, and so with this understanding that the new IP would have to make one killer of a first impression, the developers' marketing strategy was simple and quite clear. Lure the audience in, yep, you got our attention, and then prove the game could stand shoulder to shoulder with its peers. And with Sony themselves backing the devs after having seen the exceptional potential on display during its roughly 5 years of development time, the end result then is one of sublimity, a mix of familiarity and uniqueness, a constant treat for the senses. And although the first few weeks of the game's release sparked some controversy regarding slightly less revealing costumes and the amount of gore in the game as compared with its demo, these have since been largely addressed and rectified, both due to player demand and goodwill. And so it soon became clear to me, after only a handful of hours of playtime, that Shift Up meant what they had said. This game was made by fans, for fans. And their unwavering passion and determination is what makes Stellar Blade so good. It's no secret that over the last decade or so, an increasing number of game developers and publishers have opted to play things safe with regards to how it depicts their characters, more specifically with regards to how women are represented. Now, rather than focusing on their already established specific target audience, companies such as NetherRealm are now known to cater to a more general audience. And so this often leads to a significant decrease in core fan support, not to mention innovation, creative focus, and quite frankly, a set of balls. I don't know about you guys, but I play video games to escape reality. I've made it no secret that I enjoy some sexiness in my games, and while not every game needs to have a certain level of sex appeal, there's certainly been a significant lack of sexy, scantily clad female badasses as of late, who don't share the same jawline as Richard Kill, for example. May he rest in peace. Stellar Blade then feels like a return to form, a beacon of hope in the industry. The game uncompromisingly flaunts all of its assets, to the point it feels like a big middle finger to those particular developers and publishers, and I absolutely love it for that. You know, up until this point, Street Fighter's Cammy was always my go-to fictional mistress, but now I'm not so sure. Eve has completely enchanted me. The added focus on jiggle physics and realistic butt fat, for example, not to mention that gorgeous English accent, only further the attraction. And I'm holding Shift Up personally accountable for the current lack of fluids in my system. Hey, I know she's just a bunch of pixels, guys, but those are some pretty damn fine looking pixels. Anyway, aside from our main girl, the game all round looks and sounds absolutely phenomenal. A true AAA standout of the PS5 era. Stellar Blade makes full use of the Unreal graphics engine. No matter where you are in the game, there is almost always something to catch your eye and gaze upon. Environments are varied, interesting, and often quite colourful. One particular aspect I love is the water physics. I've never enjoyed swimming this much in a video game before. Well, aside from obvious reasons. The water responds and reacts so well in Stellar Blade, I don't think there's been a game I've played on the PS5 that makes water look and feel this immersive and atmospheric. Lighting and contrast are absolutely top tier too, but it's something you pick up on more during the darker areas of the game like Matrix 11. How the light effectively reflects off Eve is just so satisfying to watch. There are some dull and washed out environments and background elements which I noticed from time to time, but with this much polish, colour and contrast at the forefront, it's nothing that actually breaks any immersion per se. I did come across the odd graphical bug which didn't exactly hinder my experience, but these were honestly very few and far between.
What is that? Watch out!
There's around 3 hours of cinematic cutscenes in the game, and they're all presented beautifully. Those high-octane moments, like your first encounter with the Belial boss, are sure to get your heart pumping, while the softer side of the narrative remains dazzling just on the graphical presentation alone. And let's face it guys, if Eve is in the frame, it's automatically a great cutscene. With 3 graphical options to choose from, performance, balanced and fidelities, I found myself preferring the balanced option, a mix of a mostly steady 60 frames per second with little compromise to the overall graphics. If you want a more comprehensive look at these 3 main categories, check out my demo review which will be listed in the description. Now, the balanced option is made even more effective with the HDR function, so having a TV with HDR capabilities is an obvious advantage here. If you've played Stellar Blade, why not let everyone know in the comments what graphics option you went with? Fighting enemies, looting, entering codes, traversing the many environments and more, these things all emit juicy, and I do mean juicy, sound design. There's nothing quite like the sound of simply collecting the many materials from chests, or confirming your reactions with a well-placed parry or dodge. You can also switch voice languages from English to Korean and more. Now, I actually enjoyed the English dub, and I know I'll be in the minority in this one. But if there's one thing I am especially impressed with by Stellar Blade's atmosphere, it's the fucking soundtrack. I have never, I repeat, never heard anything like Stellar Blade's soundtrack in a video game before. I am in love with this game's music. It is sublime. I mean, we're talking 10 out of 10 stuff here, guys. Stellar Blade boasts over 120 different tracks, and none of which I feel outstays their welcome at all. The game is spaced out evenly enough to allow each theme to stand out on its own and shine. From atmospheric and angelic melodies like Eidos 7 and The Wasteland, to more adrenaline-fueled tracks like when combating the many thrilling bosses in the game, everything just seems so distinct from what I've previously played during my 33 plus years of gaming. Furthermore, you often hear the same track presented but with a different tone, depending on factors such as engaging with enemies or traversing deeper into the environment. This all helps in removing any staleness, which I think was a smart move given the actual size of the game, which I'll briefly revisit later. So, with this much beauty and this much care put into the game's incredible presentation and atmosphere, can the same be said then for its narrative?
Transmitting final briefing. As of now, Airborne Squad 7 will exterminate the Alpha Nativas occupying District 3. Their objective is the capture or dispatchment of the Elder Nativa. Pods entering atmosphere.
During my time with the Stellar Blade demo, one thing that concerned me was how effective the narrative would be, more specifically with regards to what seemed at the time a slightly lackluster cast of characters who didn't exactly beam with personality. Now, having played the existing story in its entirety, I can happily confirm that most of my concerns have been put to rest. Keeping this as vague as possible here, Eve is a member of the 7th Airborne Squad whose mission is to eliminate a violent and ghastly race called the Natiba, who have wiped out most of the humans and claimed the Earth as their own. The whole world has been utterly destroyed and pulverized as a result of this conflict. And so, with the help of Adam, one of the remaining scavengers on Earth, and Lily, a highly capable technician, Eve embarks on a journey across deserts, wastelands, cities and underground laboratories, which reveal far more about the current circumstance than she could have realised. I really can't go deeper than that, guys, but I'll tell you something. The quality of the narrative is actually far deeper and engaging than I make it sound. Now, some people felt that it was very predictable, but not me. Stellar Blade is actually quite thought-provoking, something I never even expected, tackling subjects such as death, religion, and what it means to be human.
Usually, things only exist because people make them. Like us.
How dare you? That's blasphemy! Sacrilege!
Right. Sorry. But the truth doesn't need to be kind, only true.
I love its commentary on where we're going as a species, and our preservation is of course a topic a lot of us have discussed more frequently in recent years, such as the implementation of artificial intelligence. The story is much more than simply eliminating monsters. There's a real emotional quality to be had here, and in some cases, you might just notice a gentle pull on the old heartstrings. One thing I absolutely dig about this narrative is its use of foreshadowing. A lot of moments I initially dismissed as nothing came to make more sense during both the final moments of the game as well as my second run through.
Adam, do you meet airborne squad members from the colony often?
No, not really. Yesterday I just happened to be around the area. I've never seen such a large-scale airborne operation.
Why did you save me?
Now, Eve's personality is practically non-existent during the first hours of the game, which is of course what we largely played in the demo, but she does gradually develop somewhat as the story progresses. It actually makes a lot of sense why Eve is the way she is the more you work through the narrative, and the same could be said for Adam, who initially I thought had about as much personality as a corpse.
Something serious seems to have happened. I have to return to Zion.
You do encounter a healthy cast of characters during the narrative. However, aside from Eve, Lily, and perhaps another, there's no real character in Stellar Blade that particularly shines through. To be honest, I kind of looked at this game's narrative and the way they pull it off as its own real thing. So, given everything I've said here, I can kind of forgive it for its supposed flaws. It'll become clear to the cinema buffs that Stellar Blade's narrative takes inspiration from various movies such as Starship Troopers, iRobot, and even The Matrix, and it often doesn't shy away from admitting this. But the same can also be said for Stellar Blade's gameplay, the most important aspect of any game. The question is, does it do enough to truly stand amongst its peers? The answer to this question is yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Next to Eve, Stellar Blade is known best for its intimidating yet thrilling combats, but the game also focuses on exploration, platforming, puzzle solving and customization. There's a lot to enjoy here, and maybe one or two things that aren't so great. The first games that came to mind when I began my very, very long road to mastering the combats were Sekiro, Devil May Cry, and the Souls games to an extent. These titles are known for their in-depth and complex battle mechanics that share the same ethos: easy to learn, difficult to master. Stellar Blade is no different, and although it borrows heavily from its peers, it still manages to make the combat feel like its own. Eve has a mix of multiple integrated mechanics such as combo attacks, special abilities, blocking, parrying, and dodging. The idea is to play things very patiently at first as you work out enemy attack patterns, and then use that knowledge to utilize the appropriate offense and defense where applicable. Pressing square will initiate light attacks which are faster, while triangle performs slower, heavier attacks. But things get even more complex when it comes to parrying and dodging, which only have a small window in which to successfully execute. Breaking an enemy's balance with the effective use of consistent parrying will grant Eve a special move called Retribution, which is essentially a stylistic finishing maneuver that deals complete damage to most minor enemies, or a big chunk of damage to those big boss battles. You must master the parry in this game. This is what developer Shift Up wants from you. Blocking will still incur slight damage, so it's essential you master your parrying skills on smaller enemies to make things a little more manageable when it comes to harder boss battles. However, dodging is, I feel, a bit more of a challenge, because some of the enemies in Stellar Blade attack so bloody fast that it's almost impossible to react to. That's where training comes in. You can access training when unlocking more skills at one of the many camps in the game, which also allows you to rest, respawning all Naytibas, but resupplying your health and inventory in the process. Camps also offer the purchasing of new offensive items, upgrades and more, as well as the ability to fast travel. The skill trees focus on either expanding already existing capabilities or unlocking new moves to add to your repertoire. Here, you have all the time in the world to work on your muscle memory and execution. The amount of dopamine you get when it all starts to click is comparable to the games it draws inspiration from. It's just so satisfying to feel like your sword is actually going into your enemy's flesh and tearing them up inside out. And I know that makes me sound like a complete nutter here, guys, but this game truly does make you feel like you're doing absolute damage to your opponents. So while it's highly likely that the majority of your first playthrough will be a bit of a mess, practice and perseverance will eventually pay off. Eve will also gain the ability to fire projectiles with the drone via various types of ammunition. This is a great way to clear out or separate crowds of enemies, or even explosive boxes cluttering up a pathway. There are certain areas in the game where you'll only have access to the drone's firepower, and these moments are so tense they make the game feel like you're playing a scary survival horror game. It's awesome. Enemies come in many shapes and sizes, and they all look amazing. Creative have done an impeccable job with the Naytiba designs. Each time you encounter a new enemy, you can find out more about them by navigating the in-game menu and learn about their backstory and attack habits. You can also learn more about the main characters you meet, and as you progress through the narrative, you'll find out even more about them. Outside of combat, you'll have a certain amount of freedom to explore the many different environments in the game. Scattered around each play area are materials to collect, which contribute to your own offensive and defensive build with the use of exospines and gear sockets, as well as investing in one of the many, and I do mean many, nanosuits and additional aesthetics you can equip Eve with. There are over 60 costumes in the game, all of which, believe it or not, are unlockable. Seriously, this game has more costumes to get your rocks off to than France's Fashion Week. And what's even better is that certain nanosuits will actually change Eve's thickness. Hey, for me, the thicker the better. Let me know your favourite nanosuits in the comments. There's also a fair bit of platforming in the game. Eve can jump, swing, climb and more as she discovers hidden areas, optional side quests, journal entries and collectibles like the soda cans. Trust me, you'll want to collect them all. However, the platforming can be a little iffy, especially in areas where one wrong move will mean instant death. Eve feels a little too floaty, especially when swinging from ropes and jumping between certain platforms. At times, it just seems that the game wasn't meant for this level of platforming, and so could feel more dangerous than the actual combat itself. The PS5's DualSense does a great job adding to the immersion. you are pretty much always sensing something during your game time. I especially like how you can feel certain enemies moving underground. I mentioned side missions earlier, and honestly, there's nothing really to shout about, apart from maybe a couple that truly stand apart. Again, no major spoilers, but suffice to say the majority of side missions here, while entertaining enough, aren't on the level of, let's say, The Witcher 3 or anything. Still, it's a welcome inclusion. Honestly, I've only just scratched the surface here. There's plenty more for you to do and discover in Stellar Blade. I've had an absolute blast, and that's partly due to my not knowing most of what's on offer here, so I want the same for you. My first playthrough took around 65 hours or so, and when you compare that to these high-profile reviewers who went through the game in around 30 hours, it makes one wonder if they actually rushed through the game. And this was me doing everything in the game, by the way. I want to get that trophy, but I've still yet to complete 2 of the 3 endings in the game, as well as the recently added boss challenge mode, and finish my first new Game Plus run, with even more upgrades and costumes to unlock. We're potentially talking about close to 150 hours of gameplay here. Now, is that worth £60? Absolutely. Much like the protagonist, Stellar Blade feels next to flawless. It feels like an old school action-adventure game, but brought to current graphical standards and expectations. Pretty much everything just seems to scream high quality here. Shift Up have gone on to say that a potential photo mode is on the way, as well as even more nano suits, which will only be locked behind a paywall if in collaboration with another IP. Otherwise, it's all free times. And with the potential for even more DLC in the future, Stellar Blade remains a prime example of developers and publishers getting it right. Now, I've struggled with the scoring for this game for the last month now, but I can say to you this: I think overall the game in itself is an 8 out of 10. I think that's a good score to suggest to other players out there. But for me personally, I'm actually going to give it a 9 out of 10. Why? Because of everything I've discussed in the video. How it stands apart in the industry. How it's a beacon of hope for sexiness in games. How it incorporates its influences and does it pretty much spot on. Yet there's improvements that can be made, but hopefully a lot of these will be addressed as time goes on, as well as in a potential sequel further on down the line, which I'm sure is going to happen. If you've yet to play Stellar Blade, I can highly recommend it. It is fantastic. Go and have some good old-fashioned sexy fun times. Let me know what you think about Stellar Blade in the comments. What's your favourite nanosuit? Your favourite location in the game? What would you change about it? Whatever your thoughts, please let us know, and like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you all very much for watching. I'm off now to take a cold shower.
Oh, I'm all relaxed now. That's nice. Do you know, I think I might... No, I'll just go to sleep.